know how we live. Big bag and that nigga be good at pretend. I hop on the sprinter with sticks in that head.
Today, I'm going to critique the Tren Twins bench press. Now, if you don't know who the Tren Twins are, they are two brothers who are extremely popular fitness influencers, and they're jacked as hell. A little about me: I held the all-time Australian total record in the 140 kilogram weight class, that's 308 pounds, from 2020 until 2022, and I have an all-time best bench press of 260 kilos, or 573 pounds. I'd also like to say that this is a critique of their technique and is strictly my opinion. I'm watching this with an open mind in hopes that I can offer you some feedback that's going to be useful in your own pursuit for a big bench press. Let's do this. Alright, let's do this. Do me a massive favor, like this video, drop a comment and subscribe to your mum's favorite channel on YouTube, Cult Strength. You are the best. Let's go. What's on the bar there? We got 2 plates, so 220 pounds roughly, maybe 225. Already have things that I want to say. I'll hold on for a second. So one thing I'll say is I can hear a mistake that he's making already in his warm-ups. Now, some people will say they're just warm-ups and they don't really take them too seriously, but you know, these guys, the way they treat their bench press, they treat their bench press like a power lifter. That's their pursuit, right? They're always trying to lift more weight. Weight is the goal. So they're not bench pressing for bodybuilding. We have to understand that. When they're bench pressing, during their warm-ups, there's a lot of breathing happening, which means that there is absolutely no bracing happening, okay? Now he looks like, well, they both bench almost identically, and they look extremely flat on the bench. There's no scapular retraction or depression, and there's no breathing and bracing. There's only breathing, okay? So that's one thing I've noticed in the warm-ups. We'll see if that changes as the weights get heavier. And I'll also pick up on a few other things. But I think they've got 3 plates on the bar now, so we'll have a look at that. Alrighty then. Now, no doubt that they're strong guys, right? There's no argument against that. I'm not here just to hate, I just want to critique things, right? They're strong dudes, they're jacked as hell. And they have a lot of fucking money, so you can't just hate for no reason. Alright. So something that I want to talk about there, again, there's an extended range of motion happening, okay? So yes, they're performing each repetition to a full lockout, and that's great, okay? Full lockout, awesome. However, what they're sacrificing is their position with their shoulders. As I said earlier, there's no scapular retraction or depression, okay? So if I can sort of give you a demonstration of what's happening here, let's have a look at what a good lockout would be, okay? So we've got our shoulder blade back, we're squeezing our scap back, okay? So we bring the bar down, we lock out like this, right? Elbow's still locked, okay? But the shoulder is staying relatively still, the joint isn't moving. What they're doing is this, right? See the difference? The scapula isn't retracted and depressed, and there's a lot of movement through the shoulder joint. Now, I believe not long after this video, one of them had a really serious pec injury. Now, pec injuries happen, okay? Obviously, when they're lifting heavy weights, there's a risk involved. We all know that. But from what I'm seeing here, there is no mitigation of that risk. They're putting themselves in a vulnerable position. That shoulder joint is moving around a lot under load, and there's a lot of stress on the pectorals. And the pecs alone, they're not built strong enough to move weights like that in that position. That's when those blowouts happen. So again, they're still warm-ups. They've just chucked on, I think we've got 160 kilos roughly, so around 340 pounds, I think, for the next set. So we'll see as it gets heavier if they tighten their technique up at all. But so far, Not great technique-wise, just strong guys. So let's have a look. So I'm seeing, more things that I'll speak about in a moment. Pecs are doing a lot of work there. You can see his pec doing a lot of squeezing, a lot of movement in that shoulder joint. Not great. Strong, but not good technique.
I'm feeling 4 or 5 for 5. 4 or 5 for 5. I think I might be able to get a few. Huh? I might be able to get a few.
So, okay, a couple of things I want to talk about there. Again, as I said earlier, no tightness, no bracing in the upper back, in the upper body, but also with their feet, from what their legs are doing, there's no leg drive happening, okay? So they haven't really applied any stability or leg drive through the floor. So again, that's not great. That's not going to help the overall product. We want to have that leg drive on the entire time, driving our heels to or through the floor as hard as we can the entire time, right? That gives us that base, that stability, that power, and that transfers up the bench into the upper body. It's like if we took our feet off the ground, bench press becomes a little more difficult, right? And then if we apply a soft amount of pressure to the ground, it's a bit easier, but if we really push our feet into the ground hard in the correct manner, we get that extra feeling of power and stability. So that's something that's really lacking there. And another thing I'm seeing here is their warm-ups, right? Now, I don't know what the plan for their session is here, but let me just say this. They're working to reasonably difficult levels during each warm-up set as the weights get heavier. So I would say they're actually doing working sets as warm-ups, okay? They're creating fatigue, they're acquiring too much fatigue, using too much energy in a warm-up set, which is not ideal when we're trying to lift heavy weights. Now, that adds risk as well, right? We're creating fatigue, and they're not using great technique as it is, so that's going to get probably sloppier as it gets heavier. So what we ideally want to focus on is during the warm-ups, we tighten it up from the beginning. Okay, that's what warm-ups are for. We tighten it up and we apply that to each set as it gets heavier. And ideally, we would do the majority of warm-up repetitions in our first 1 or 2 sets. But the sets following that, working to the top set, whatever that might be, the reps come down because we're trying to keep fatigue levels low. We're just trying to make sure that we are able to handle the load just by acquiring a bit of stimulus. That's what those last warm-ups are for, right? Just getting used to handling the slightly heavier weights, maintain that good technique. But from what I'm seeing here, this is, it's a fun way to train, no doubt, and they've acquired incredible physiques and they're really strong. But as I said earlier, I believe one of them had a really serious pec injury not long after this, and that probably could have been mitigated or avoided by some better practices with their training. But I think they're stacking on 4 plates now. That's 405 pounds. 4 plates here in Australia is about 396. So it's just a little bit heavier than our 4 plates, but it's about 185 kilos, 184 kilos roughly. So we'll have a look now. I'm assuming this would be their top set maybe for the day, but we never know. It's just a lot of pec. It's getting heavier, the technique hasn't tied up, and there's just a lot of pec involved in that press, okay? He's not able to use the lats, he's not able to use his upper back for that stability to press from, okay? He hasn't got the scapulas retracted or depressed. It's just not tight and stable, and as it's getting heavier, you can see that form breaking down a little bit more and a little bit more, which I'm not gonna say isn't normal, but if you're already bench pressing with a less than ideal technique, we don't want it to break down any further because that's when injuries happen. You're gonna see as it's getting heavier, they're getting more flared through the elbows, and being flared through the elbows, that's not what we're really looking for here, okay? That's again, flared elbows means no retraction and depression of the scapula. Let's keep rolling. He's jacked, no doubt. Oh man, okay. Pay attention to where he's touching the barbell right now on his chest. Oof, very high on the chest, very high on the chest. Okay, so I want to talk about that. And forgive me if you can hear the birds in the background. I live in Australia, live in a regional area. Nature's beautiful, but the birds make it a little bit difficult sometimes with audio, so forgive me there, gang. But I was talking about where he's touching the barbell on his chest then. Now, on the flat bench press, right, typically I find the best touch point would be just below the nipple, okay? On the hard part, right in the middle of the chest there, the sternum. Now, he's touching above the nipples, okay, which means, and as I said earlier, looking at his elbows, they look flared, okay? So there's just a lot of stress through the pec and through the front of the shoulder and the joint, okay? So they're the positions that we want to avoid under a heavy load. We want to stay really tight, keep the scaps retracted and depressed as hard as we possibly can. That's the ideal position to be in when we're bench pressing. So if you're bench pressing, your flat bench press, and you're touching above the nipples on the chest, maybe we need to consider bringing it down a little bit. But in saying that, to achieve this perfect position, we need to work on the entire base. So we need to get that scapular retraction and depression, which does create a little bit of an arch. It doesn't have to be exaggerated, but that's what's going to keep your shoulders and your pecs healthy. If you lay flat on the bench, this is dangerous, man. We need to shove the shoulder blades back, chest up to the bar as hard as you can, and you close the distance that you have to travel as well. So that would be ideal. We'll keep rolling. Okay, so he just attempted what looks to be around 200 kilos, but it might be 205 kilos, around 450 pounds, I think. The reason that he failed that lift, one, he's acquired too much fatigue already. Again, he's going for a max single after doing all that work already. Not very smart, okay? So high risk of missing the lift and also high chance of injury. Didn't get injured, thankfully. However, if you were to pay attention to his legs, they're just moving around, okay? They're just moving around, they're not driving, they're very passive. And they're not there to help. So that lack of leg drive and stability, he lost all his tightness, and then he was just left there pressing with his pecs, and his pecs weren't strong enough to move that weight, to move that 450 pounds or whatever it may be. So that's something that if I was, hypothetically coaching someone like this, that's something that I would have them working on a lot, especially early on in warm-ups. That's where you're going to make a lot of progress. You're not going to just go into your top sets and only focus on it there and try and do it under heavy loads. It's really difficult to start doing something new under a weight that's super challenging. So when you're learning new techniques, when you're making adjustments, make sure that you just slow it down, bring the weight back a little bit, and just nail that new movement pattern. And before you know it, you're going to be strong as shit. Let's go. Back down sets, I think. Around 160, 165 kilos on the bar here. 330 pounds. Again, I'm hearing the breathing. So every rep, touching really high. Yeah. As I said, super strong guys, but just left wanting here with this technique. I would argue this guy's bench press technique is slightly better than the other guy with his shirt off. I'm not sure which one's which, to be honest with you, but I hope that you could learn something there. Now, I understand that these guys aren't necessarily committed to powerlifting or bodybuilding. I think they do a bit of both, but they bench press with the aspirations of a powerlifter, but they're using the technique of a bodybuilder. Okay, so they're using a very pectoral dominant bench press technique. Now that's fine if you're a bodybuilder, right? We're thinking about it very differently. It's not about moving maximal load. It's about using our pecs as much as we possibly can. We're trying to grow our chest. And that's what they're doing here. They're using their pecs, but they're trying to move big weights and max numbers. And that's when catastrophes happen. Okay, I'm not saying injuries don't happen for no reason. Sometimes they do, but there's always things we can do to minimize the risks. And by, continually working on technique, doing the boring shit, reinforcing good positions, That's what's going to allow you to stay in the gym long enough to achieve big numbers. Because if you don't do that, if you don't stay injury free for long enough, then how are you really going to get strong, right? That's, lessons I learned along the way. I'm not perfect by any means. I still make bad decisions, and sometimes it's like, do what I say, don't do what I do. I'm just being honest with you. I like to do some crazy shit sometimes. Currently have a ruptured bicep, which I'm getting an operation on Thursday, because I took up arm wrestling. And I'm very competitive, and it happens, right? I play a stupid game, won a stupid prize. I'm not sitting here saying that I'm bulletproof or I do all the right things and I'm better than everyone else, because I'm not. There's no hate involved here. Just offering some honest feedback, and I hope that it can help some of you in your pursuit of a big bench press. Please like this video. Please drop a comment. Please let me know what you learned, if you learned anything. If you want to see more of this critiquing style content, that would mean a lot to me. And of course, make sure you subscribe to my channel. We're trying to grow this big, and that would mean the world to me. But until next time, gang, I think you know what to do. Go to the fucking gym, baby. Let's do it.